Yesterday I got this Sony Dream Machine at the Salvation Army thrift store. I got it for $4.99, and I tried it out. I plugged it in, but I didn't actually try setting it. But I have another one of these black Dream Machines exactly like this, and I got that at a different thrift store, and it had a problem with the clock switches for setting the time, and I'll just show it. The hour works. You can set the hour, but the minute setting doesn't work. And there's also an alarm button here that doesn't work either. I found the sleep works alright, and haven't really checked the snooze because I wasn't able to set the alarm. And so what I did with the other Dream Machine was I took it apart, and I have a bunch of switches. Let's see here. I actually have a spare bunch that I ordered, and let's see here. I like these small push button switches. They have 4 contacts on them, and they're tactile switches. So I'm glad I bought extra, because for this one here I probably may have to change at least 2 switches in here. So I'll show that again when I take disassemble. So there's 4 screws that hold this case top on, and they're all on the bottom here. They have these little arrows kind of etched into the plastic to show where the screws are. I think they're Phillips head screws. So yeah, they are. So I'll just take that off and show you what's inside. Of course, it doesn't come out when I have it on camera. There it comes out. So they're these long screws that hold the top onto the clock radio. So I was able to get the top off. It was a little tricky. First, I pried this slide switch off, and then I found, after I took all the screws at the bottom that was holding it, it was still kind of being held by something in the top. So it turns out this front plastic screen, I kind of pried it out with these iPhone opener tools, and that was got it out. There it is on the top. That's what it looks like on the top. And these are all the switches, these tactile switches for changing for setting the time and the alarm. And there's a couple of them that I'll probably need to replace because they're not working anymore. But I have lots of extras, and it's just this tactile switch with it's got 4 leads on it. So I just take this top circuit board out, turn it upside down, and desolder the leads under the switches, and just replace the new switch in there and solder it back in. I got it going with my last one, so I'm doing this with the latest one that I got. So this is the top of the controller board for this Sony Dream Machine, and it's got kind of like these plastic tabs that hold the circuit board on. Once you kind of release it from these tabs, then can get access to the bottom. And so what I'm going to do is just going to put an ohm meter on each one of these switches and just verify which switch isn't working and then replace them. But I think it seems the minute switch for sure doesn't work. The clock switch, and which is this one, and the hour set switch works properly. It's just the minute switch that's not working, and the alarm switch may not work either. So I'll check that. Pretty sure the sleep switch works, and there's also a snooze button here too. I'll put an ohm meter on these switch leads and work the switch just to verify which ones are actually bad. So I have my ohm meter here, and I was just checking the contacts on these tactile switches just to make sure I'm going to change the right one. I'm pretty sure I have to change the minute switch and the alarm switch. They both seem to have bad contacts. And I don't think it's just a matter of cleaning them either. It's just I've noticed that these kind of tactile switches need to be replaced. So I had another Sony Dream Machine like this before, and I did the same thing and it got it working again. So I'm going to do this. Just going to desolder these switch contacts here and then just replace it with a new switch. So I was able to desolder these switches here, and it's right out of, there's one, there's the holes for one there and the holes for the other there, and I just used desolder. Actually, I just used desoldering wick, and I use these helping hands just to hold it while I was desoldering it. These are the switches here. So I'll just put the new switches in, solder two new switches in, and then try it from there. So I ended up replacing all the push button switches on this board. So there was 6 switches altogether, and I replaced all of them. All these ones here. There's a couple that were bad, and the other ones were, there was one that was kind of iffy, so I ended up replacing all of them. And these are all the switches right there that I took out. I had a bag of new switches, so I just ended up replacing them all. And I used this brush and alcohol, and I just cleaned the flux off to clean the board up. And I'm just going to put it all back together again. I found these replacement switches are slightly shorter, and they use these tabs to actually push onto these switches, these tactile switches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip off these plastic pins slightly so it actually makes contact with the top of these tactile switches and is able to work them. So I'll just use some wire clippers and just clip off maybe 1 or 2 millimeters from each one of these little pins that contact the tops of the tactile switches. So you may notice I've clipped off, I did a trial one, so just put this on here, and this one works. I clipped 2 of those plastic pins down about 2 millimeters. Now it allows this to work that tactile switch, because the tactile switch button is a little bit slightly smaller than the original, but that's how I was able to get it to work. These other ones, they don't work the tactile at all because I haven't clipped them yet, but I found that 2 millimeters was just the right amount. It's these little pins, right, plastic pins, that allow this whole plastic piece to move up and down so it can contact the top of those tactile switches. And I just used these, the Exolite wire cutters, and I just clipped off these pins here, and I'm going to do the rest so all the other tactile switches will work properly. Because the way it is now, the throw of these plastic tabs isn't enough, but after doing that, see, that one's working there. You can tell from the sound of the tactile switch working. And these ones aren't, so that's all I'll do is just clip down the rest of those pins so these can actually actuate the switches. So I've trimmed all these little tabs here that were keeping the plastic switch cover from actually going down far enough to actuate these push button switches, because they're slightly shorter than the original, so I had to trim all these. And so when I test it, they're all working now. So I can reassemble it. Also, there's a little volume wheel that you have to take out when you pull the circuit board out. So it has this plastic tab that goes up through the board and into this potentiometer, and you just have to line up before you reassemble it. You just have to remember to put this plastic volume control wheel back in and just align it up. It's kind of like a slotted piece of plastic that lines up into the slot of the volume control. Just have to remember to put that back in too. Now it's ready for reassembly. So here's the Sony Dream Machine reassembled, and all switches are working the way they should now. So I'll show the clock, setting the clock hours. That works. And it worked before, but it works better now. The minutes didn't work at all. This is the minutes setting. So that works. Here's the alarm, showing the alarm time. That didn't work before. It does now after replacing that switch. And sleep. Sleep works. and the snooze works. It wasn't working before either. So there's actually the minute, the alarm, and the snooze button weren't working, and the clock button was kind of intermittent a little bit, and I don't think, yeah, the snooze button didn't work, and the alarm, yeah, the alarm didn't work either. So basically replaced all 6 buttons on here, and this is them right there, and works good now, no problems.